Back in the early 1900s, there was a race to conquer the final frontier remaining on land. As the world was becoming smaller and the blank spaces were being filled on the map, the planet's two poles remained elusive targets, with a number of explorers setting out to claim them. Expeditions to the poles were driven by the pursuit of glory, both individual and national. At the time, the pioneers embarking on those exploration missions were doing so at a great personal risk, as the trips they were making required both extreme physical and psychological endurance. Today, more than 100 years later, setting foot on the poles has been made significantly easier due to advances in technology. Despite that, being among the few people to reach the top and bottom of the world is still considered a remarkable achievement. But what makes the poles so special, and how easy is it to get there today? Let's start with the North Pole. As the most northern point on the planet, the North Pole is located in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. Given the extreme low temperatures, the majority of the Arctic is usually covered by a layer of ice averaging around 4 meters in thickness for most of the year. The ice sheet does recede in the summer, but it does not disappear completely. However, the constant movement of the surface makes it impractical to build any permanent settlement near the North Pole. The first people to get to the North Pole were a group of men led by Robert Edwin Peary. The expedition relied on wooden dog-pulled sleds and managed to get to the top of the world on April 6, 1909, or 37 days after departing from Ellesmere Island in Canada. If you want to go to the North Pole today, you have several options. You can get there by air, usually done by flying from Canada or Norway, which could cost you more than $10,000. Regardless of your flight point of origin, you will be landing at the Borneo Ice Camp, which is a temporary Russian base 60 kilometers away from the North Pole. Once at the Borneo camp, you will be taking a helicopter ride to the North Pole, which should take around 30 minutes. Another option will be to go by sea via a Russian icebreaker. Unlike the ships used by the pioneers in the 1900s, the modern icebreaker is a nuclear-powered vessel purpose-built for use in waters covered with ice. The cost of this trip starts at $26,000 and could go higher depending on the package you select. The ship departs from Murmansk in Russia, and the duration of the trip is between 5 to 8 days, taking place during the months of June and July. However, the real challenge is to go over ground from Russia or Canada by skiing and camping on the ice. There are several races you can participate in, which span close to 500 kilometers to the North Pole. The cost of this adventure is around $35,000, but in order to make the trek, you must make sure you are in perfect physical condition, have climbing experience, and know how to use ice axe and crampons. Given the effects of global warming, this trip is especially dangerous due to the receding of the ice, which would likely be unstable in places and make it very dangerous to ski over. Before embarking on this trip, you should be aware that you can encounter severe cold temperatures and tough weather conditions. You should also remember that you're walking over an ocean several kilometers deep with a probability of falling through the ice. Lastly, depending on the time of year you take the trip, you might also encounter polar bears, which usually roam the ice, hunting for seals and other prey.
Okay.
Although the poles are quite similar in their extreme climate and unpredictable weather, the South Pole is quite different from the North. For starters, unlike the North Pole, which is located in the middle of an ocean surrounded by land, the South Pole is located on the Antarctic continent, surrounded by oceans. Given its location, Antarctica is the coldest, windiest and driest continent on the planet. Its climate is even more extreme than that of the North Pole, with temperatures falling to -90 Celsius. This is due to several factors. Firstly, the average altitude on the continent is above 2,500 meters, largely due to the thick layer of ice covering the land. The higher altitude results in lower air pressure, which in turn has a negative effect on temperatures. In addition, the thick layer of ice and the land beneath it are colder than the liquid ocean under the North Pole, which contributes further to the lower temperature. Lastly, due to the elliptical orbit of the planet, the distance between us and the Sun varies during the year. The point where Earth is furthest from the Sun coincides with the time of the winter season of the Southern Hemisphere, which results in lower temperatures than those during the winter of the Northern Hemisphere. As a result of the extreme cold climate, the seas around Antarctica freeze during the winter, which increases the size of the continent by 100%. The extreme climate has also deterred any large-scale settlement, unlike the Arctic, which has been inhabited for thousands of years by people who draw a living from fishing, birding, and hunting. The first people to reach the South Pole were a party of 5 led by the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen on December 14, 1911. Amundsen reached the pole 56 days after departing from the coast with the help of sleds and 52 dogs. Today you can travel to the South Pole by air, flying from Punta Arenas in Chile with a stopover at Patriot Hills Camp in the Ellsworth Mountains of Antarctica, before flying to the pole itself. The trips usually take place in November through January during the Southern Hemisphere summer. The cost of visiting the South Pole this way varies around the $40,000 mark. Again, if you're feeling more adventurous and would like to test your limits, you can ski to the South Pole. Depending on the distance you wish to cover, the duration and cost of the trip can vary wildly. This extreme challenge is not for everyone, as it requires both extreme physical and mental stamina. Regardless of how you do it, if you manage to go to both poles, you will be one of the few people on the planet to have done so. In case you've also climbed to the top of the 7 summits, the highest mountains on each of the 7 continents, you would then achieve an Explorer's Grand Slam, an accomplishment completed by less than 60 people in the world. If you'd like to know more about the 7 summits, please check out my video in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share and subscribe for more. If you'd like me to make another exploring challenge video, you can give me some suggestions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.